I'm Mike Brilla, host of the Inspired Teacher Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 254 of the House of EdTech podcast, we are going to talk about growing your podcast audience and building your brand. We're diving into Chapter 7 of I Like to Podcast, and You Will Too. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech. My name is Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech launched in 2014, giving me the opportunity to speak with teachers, leaders, and creators so you can more effectively integrate technology, strengthen your pedagogy, and have more confidence in your classroom and school so you can make an impact. Get involved with the podcast by visiting my website, chrisnessie.com. Using technology isn't difficult, and this is where it begins. This is the House of EdTech. Welcome back. Or if this is your first time, welcome for the first time. See, here you go, folks. I'm doing this live as I record it. And I'm live on Instagram, I'm looking at the book, I'm looking at the screen, and I became distracted for just a second. That's the fun of podcasting. And I do have fun with this. Or I am having fun with this. It's been fun the whole time. I'm glad you're here making House of EdTech a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. Although, maybe after the first 10 seconds of this episode, you might be thinking, why should I keep listening? Well, I encourage you to keep listening. Because in this episode, as I said at the very top, I'm going to be bringing you Chapter 7 of the book, I Like to Podcast and You Will Too. This is the House of EdTech Guide to Podcasting, which I self-published in August of 2023. Now, in addition to going through this next chapter, I will also, where appropriate, provide additional commentary on the topic of podcasting. Now, if you would like to pick up a copy of the book for yourself or somebody else, you can go to chrisnessie.com/I Like to Podcast. The book is available physically as well as your Kindle device. If you don't want to pick up a copy of the book, that's okay. I understand. But if you are getting value from these episodes and you want to show your appreciation, you can visit chrisnessie.com/support. Along the lines of connecting and communicating, I'd also like to invite you to join my Discord community, where we can discuss this book, we can discuss technology, we can discuss education. All you have to do is go to chrisnessie.com/Discord. Now, speaking of connecting, I want to keep this current, so I'm recording this and releasing this on Sunday, November 17th, 2024, and prior to this week, I was on Blue Sky. And I don't know that I had ever talked about it. I may have mentioned it, but nothing is jumping out at me. But the mass exodus from Twix is on, from Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. It is on, like Donkey Kong, all right? So if you want to connect with me on Blue Sky, you can go to chrisnessie.com/Blue Sky. I am at mrnessie.bsky.social on Blue Sky, but I am in the midst of really the first week, as I'm doing this in real time, of a 30-day only using Blue Sky challenge. I am ignoring Twitter. That's right. I'm ignoring it. I'm not paying attention to Twitter until December. I'm only communicating socially via Blue Sky. I mean, I still have, Threads and Instagram and, some other things. Discord is there for sure. But I'm only doing Blue Sky as my replacement for Twitter for 30 days, and I want to see how it goes. And I'm going to be honest, I like what I see. I feel like we are turning back the hands of time on connected education. So if you are on Blue Sky, connect with me. And if you're like, what is Blue Sky? You should go check it out. BLUESKY as a very, very good replacement for Twix, as I now call it. All right, the last thing I want to talk about before we get into Chapter 7 is the 2024 House of EdTech Smackdown. That is going to be episode 257, so we're a few episodes away from that, and that's going to come your way on December 22nd, 2024. You can see everything that's ever been submitted because, again, if you're new, this is the last episode of the calendar year, and this will be the 11th one that I've done. It's where you, the listener, gets to talk about what you loved in EdTech this year. What's your favorite EdTech tool, tip, hack, website, whatever. I want you to share it, and we're going to do an old-fashioned smackdown right here on the podcast. All you need to do is go to chrisnessy.com/voicemail, and you could submit some audio. Tell me where you're from, what you do, how to connect with you, and tell me and the rest of the House of EdTech listening audience what you loved in EdTech in 2024. And all you got to do is get it to me by December 20th, 2024, and that'll give me a couple of days to put that all together. It's a very fast episode to produce. Probably going to live stream it here on Instagram like I'm doing right now with this episode 254. But if you want to participate, I would love to have you be a part of that episode. And now I present I Like to Podcast, and you will too, a House of EdTech Guide to Podcasting, Chapter 7, Growing Your Podcast Audience and Building Your Brand. Chapter 7, Growing Your Podcast Audience and Building Your Brand. With millions of people tuning in to listen to their favorite shows daily, starting a podcast has become an increasingly attractive option for individuals and businesses looking to share their ideas, stories, and expertise with a wide audience. But simply creating a podcast isn't enough to ensure success. To truly thrive in the world of podcasting, you need to be strategic about growing your audience and building your brand. In this chapter, I'll discuss some key strategies for doing just that. Let's start by discussing the importance of having a clear and compelling concept for your podcast and how to effectively communicate that concept with potential listeners. I'll also talk about the role of networking and collaborations in growing your audience and how to use social media and other online platforms to promote your podcast and connect with your listeners. Finally, I'll explore the various ways you can use your podcast to build your personal or maybe a professional or business brand, and how to leverage your growing audience to achieve your goals and drive success. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your podcast to the next level, this chapter will provide valuable insights and practical advice for growing your podcast audience and building your brand. There are several benefits of having a successful podcast. Some of the most notable benefits include, number 1, increased exposure. A successful podcast can reach a wider audience and gain more visibility, which can lead to more opportunities for collaboration, partnerships, and potentially sponsorships. Number 2, revenue opportunities. A successful podcast can generate revenue through advertising, sponsorships, and other forms of monetization. This can provide a valuable source of income for the creator of a podcast. Number 3, community building. A successful podcast can foster a dedicated community of listeners who engage with the content and provide valuable feedback and insights. This can help to build a loyal and engaged audience for the podcast. Number 4, influence and impact. A successful podcast can establish its creators as influential figures in their niche or industry, which can lead to opportunities for speaking engagements, consulting, or other forms of thought leadership. That's what the House of EdTech has done for me. When I started this podcast, for all intents and purposes, I was a nobody. I started the podcast because I got tired of tweeting into the ether, where I felt I had literally something to say and I wanted to be heard. So for me, of these 4 reasons, it's been about influence and impact on the world of education in the niche of education technology. Let's talk about identifying your target audience. Knowing who your podcast is intended for is important for several reasons. First, it can help you create content that is relevant and engaging to your target audience. By understanding the interests, needs, and preferences of your intended audience, you can create episodes that are tailored to their interests and likely to resonate with them. This can help to increase the appeal and value of your podcast to your target audience. Second, knowing who your podcast is intended for can also help you to effectively promote and market your show. By understanding the demographics, interests, and behaviors of your target audience, you can develop targeted and effective marketing strategies that are likely to reach and engage their intended audience. This can help to increase the visibility and success of your show. Knowing who your podcast is intended for is crucial for creating content that resonates with the audience, promoting your podcast effectively, and ultimately growing your audience and building the brand. There are several tips that can help you identify and define your target audience. Some of these tips are: number 1, conduct research. Conducting some research can provide valuable insights into the demographics, interests, and behaviors of listeners to the show potentially. This can help you better understand your target audience and develop content and marketing strategies that are tailored to their interests and their needs. Number 2, analyze your existing audience. If you already have an audience for your podcast, analyzing their demographics and engagement can provide valuable insight into who they are and what they are interested in. This can help you create content and marketing strategies that are likely to resonate with these existing people and attract more listeners like them. Number 3, identify your niche or your topic. Identifying your niche or topic can also help you define your audience. For example, if your podcast covers a specific topic or industry, you can target listeners who are interested in that topic or industry. This can help you create content that is both relevant and valuable to the target audience. These tips can help you identify and define your podcast audience, which can help you create content and marketing strategies that are tailored to their interests and needs. I hope you are hearing a theme here about the people and what they're interested in. Next up, developing a strong brand identity. A strong podcast brand can provide several benefits for your podcast. Some of these benefits include: number 1, increased visibility and recognition. A strong podcast brand can make your podcast more visible and recognizable to potential listeners. This can help to differentiate your podcast from competitors and make it more memorable to potential listeners. Number 2, enhanced credibility and trust. A strong podcast brand can also enhance the credibility and trust of your podcast in the eyes of potential listeners. By creating a professional and consistent brand, you can establish your podcast as a trusted and reputable source of information or entertainment. Number 3, improved engagement and loyalty. A strong podcast brand can also improve engagement and loyalty among your existing audience. By creating a consistent and cohesive brand identity, you can foster a sense of community and belonging among your listeners, which can lead to increased engagement and more loyalty. And number 4, more opportunities for growth and monetization. A strong podcast brand can also provide more opportunities for growth and monetization. By establishing your podcast as a trusted and influential platform, you can attract listeners and generate revenue through advertising, sponsorships, and other forms of monetization. You might want to go back to episode 253, where I talked about monetization in Chapter 6. A podcaster can create a consistent and cohesive brand identity for their podcast by following the following steps. And we're not limiting to these 4 things, but these 4 things will help you. Number 1, define your brand values and position. Start by defining your core values and positioning of your podcast. This can include your unique value proposition, target audience, and target market. This will provide a foundation for all of your branding efforts. Number 2, develop a unique and memorable name. Choose a unique and memorable name for your podcast that captures the essence of your brand and resonates with your audience. This can help to differentiate your podcast from its competitors and make it more recognizable. Number 3, create a consistent and cohesive visual identity. Develop a consistent identity for your podcast, including its logo, its colors, the fonts you use. It all works together. This can help to create a professional and recognizable brand for your podcast. And number 4, and this, if I was ranking them, this should be number 1. But here's number 4. Engage with your audience. Engage through social media, newsletters, and any other channel you can think of and be consistent with so you can build a community of loyal listeners and foster a strong brand for your podcast. You can create a consistent and cohesive brand identity for your show that is unique, memorable, and professional. This will help to separate your show from others. And don't worry about or think about competing with other voices in the same space. There's plenty of room for every podcast. Next up, creating engaging and high-quality content. The importance of producing engaging and high-quality content for your podcast cannot be overstated. Engaging and high-quality content is crucial for attracting and retaining listeners, building a loyal and engaged audience, and ultimately achieving success for your podcast. Producing engaging content means creating episodes that are interesting, informative, entertaining, or otherwise compelling to your target audience. This can help to keep your listeners engaged and coming back for more episodes. It can also help to establish your podcast as a valuable and trusted source in your niche or your industry. Producing high-quality content means creating episodes that are well-researched, well-written, and well-produced, and free of technical errors and other distractions. I guess I kind of blew it in the first 10 seconds of this episode. But don't worry, there were some other mistakes that I edited out for sure. This can help to enhance the credibility and professionalism of your podcast and make it more appealing to listeners. It can also help to improve the overall listening experience for your audience, which can foster a sense of trust and loyalty. Overall, producing engaging and high-quality content is essential for attracting and retaining listeners. And that's the name of the game, getting people to listen to your show, building a loyal and engaged audience, and that's going to help you achieve success for your show. Here are some tips for developing a compelling format, engaging with your audience, and delivering consistently strong podcast episodes. Number 1, develop that compelling format. Think about what is engaging, informative, or entertaining for your audience. This could include considering the length of your episodes, the frequency that you release them, and the structure and format of your content. Number 2, engage with the audience. There's a reason we're talking about the audience so much in this chapter. You've got to engage with them on social media, email them, get a phone number where they can call you. However you can connect with the people listening to your podcast will be invaluable. Respond to every question, solicit feedback, promote new episodes. All things that you've witnessed me try to do here. Number 3, deliver consistently strong episodes. When they're high quality, engaging, and well researched, this can help to establish your show as a trusted and reputable source of information. I think I've definitely done that. Has every one of my 254 episodes been a winner? You're talking to the creator. Absolutely. Every single episode has been worth listening to. I enjoyed creating them. Number 4, continuously improve and evolve. Seek feedback from your audience. Analyze data from listenership numbers from your podcast media host. Identify opportunities for improvement and evolution. I talked about that just a few episodes ago, before I started creating the audio version of this book. The House of Ed Tech Reset. Change is coming. It can't stay the same way forever. Stick around. By following these tips, you can develop a compelling format, engage with your audience, and deliver consistently strong episodes for your show. This can help to attract and retain listeners, and you will build a loyal and engaged audience, and you will achieve success for your show. Next up, promoting your podcast and building that audience. Marketing and promotion play a critical role in growing your audience. Marketing is the process of creating awareness and interest for your podcast among potential listeners, while promotion, that's the process of encouraging those potential listeners to take action and ultimately become a regular listener. Effective marketing and promotion can help to increase the visibility and recognition of your podcast among potential listeners. This can include leveraging social media, email marketing, and other channels to reach and engage with potential listeners. It can also include collaborating with other creators and influencers to increase the exposure of your podcast to new audiences. Effective marketing and promotion can also help to differentiate your show from, I don't like the word competitors, and I'm sorry that I used it, but it's there. But you can also differentiate your show and position it as unique and valuable. Because you know what? You are what makes your show unique and valuable. That's why I think everybody should have a podcast, or at least try it. Nobody sees the world the way I do. Sometimes I don't know how I see it, but this show is not the only EdTech podcast out there. There's lots out there. But you're only getting my view on this show. And people will get your view on your show. Here are some tips to help you effectively promote your podcast to potential listeners and grow your audience. Number 1, leverage social media. Use platforms such as Facebook, Instagram. See, here you go. Another thing that is going to be outdated from my point of view. Twitter, Blue Sky, get on there. Promote your podcast to potential listeners. This can include sharing links to your episodes, engaging with your audience, collaborating with creators. Social media is a great place to be social. But I caution you, don't just show up and start putting messages out about, listen to my show, here's my website, here's my stuff. You don't want to come across as salesy. Make connections. Contribute to the conversation. Number 2, email marketing. Consider using email marketing to promote your podcast to your existing audience. Maybe you are currently blogging, or you have been using Instagram, for example. Get a way to collect some emails and start to build that email list. Don't spam people, but you could send regular newsletters, you could send updates with information about new episodes, or other relevant information that you want to reach. That's why emails are so valuable. Again, I mentioned this earlier, not in this episode, but in a previous one, about how I use email marketing for the House of Ed Tech. If you get onto my email list, I very rarely send out an email that I'm writing, from scratch. But what does happen is every time I release an episode, a few days later, you'll get an email with the show notes and a link to subscribe or follow the podcast. That's valuable. Number 3, collaborate with other creators and influencers. This can include guest appearances on other podcasts, cross-promotion, or co-branded content. Maybe you do a part 1 and a part 2 where you're on my show and I'm on your show, Part 1 is mine, part 2 is yours, and we try to grow our audiences by connecting our episodes to new people. And really, guesting on other people's podcasts is a great way to get your voice out there. Number 4, optimize your podcast for search. Use the important keywords in your episode titles, your descriptions, and other metadata. This is going to improve the visibility of your podcast in places like Google and Bing. And again, if people can find your podcast, they can potentially listen to it. So make it findable. Number 5, you might consider using paid advertising. You might consider using something like Google AdWords or Facebook ads or Instagram ads to promote your podcast to target audiences. This can help to increase the visibility and recognition of your show. It might not be perfect. We can't guarantee that people are going to listen, but if people are aware of your show, they could potentially listen. Number 6, utilize guest appearances. Again, consider appearing as a guest on other podcasts or other media outlets to promote your show to new people. This can help to increase the exposure of your podcast to potential listeners. You could also establish yourself as an expert or a thought leader in your niche or industry. I'd like to think I am more of an expert now than I was in 2014, and I continue to put the work in. Number 7, our last tip. Engage with the audience. This might be the 4th or 5th time I'm telling you that in this episode, in this chapter. Engage with them through social media. Email them. Get on YouTube. Go on TikTok. Connect with people. Solicit comments. Answer their questions. Encourage them to connect with you. By the way, you can send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or you can connect with me on Blue Sky. Go to chrisnessy.com/bluesky, House of Ed Tech on Instagram. I'm everywhere. So there's more than enough ways to get in touch with me, and I want to talk to you. I want to know what you think of the show. I want to know from your perspective, what types of episodes should I be creating? What type of episodes do you need? What do you want to learn? Let's have that conversation. Okay, let's wrap up this chapter. This is a bigger one. In this chapter, we discussed the importance of building a strong brand and growing your audience for your podcast. A strong brand and a growing audience can provide numerous benefits, such as increased exposure, revenue opportunities, and the ability to establish influence and impact in your niche or your industry. The chapter also provided tips for identifying and defining your target audience, developing a strong brand identity, creating engaging and high-quality content, and promoting your podcast and potentially monetizing it. But again, the real monetization stuff, that's back in Chapter 6 or Episode 253. By following these tips, I don't make any promises, but it's better than doing nothing. So if you put a little effort into some of these things, you can effectively grow your podcast audience and build a strong brand for yourself and your show. And the rewards, now I'm going off book here, the rewards are plentiful. There are so many ways that you can benefit from having a podcast. It can bring you the opportunity to connect with great people. It might afford you the opportunity to travel and speak. It might help you get a job. The possibilities are endless because of all that it takes to create a podcast. If you're currently podcasting, I'd love to know how you've benefited from your podcast, and I'd love to know some of your best tips and strategies for growing your audience and building your brand. And if you haven't launched your podcast yet, I'm happy to answer questions. Let me know your idea. Maybe I can help you come up with a title. Maybe I can help you with the cover art. Maybe you're looking for an editor. I offer that as a service if you're interested. Let me know. How can I serve you? Because you're a part of my audience, and I want to grow that audience. So tell somebody else about the show. All right, let's wrap up this episode. All right, before I say goodbye, I do want to encourage you to connect with me on a couple of places. Number one, Instagram. I am at House of EdTech on Instagram. Number two, Blue Sky that I just talked about at the beginning of this episode. Go to chrisnessy.com/Blue Sky, and that's BLUESKY. And let's figure out Blue Sky together. Again, it's really just new Twitter, which is good. Good, because old new Twitter is not so good. And join the Discord. Join the Discord. Try it out. chrisnessy.com/Discord. And we can build community, we can have conversations, and that's what this is all about. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 7 of the book, and it's time to say goodbye. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. Please subscribe or follow the show wherever you're listening, and continue to make this podcast a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. Links to resources and things that I talked about in this episode can be found on my website in the show notes. Go to chrisnessy.com/254, or they are also a swipe or a tap away where you're listening right now. I also want to hear from you because I value your feedback and your perspective. Whether you are a podcaster or not, I know that there is value in these episodes, and maybe if you're creating content, you've got questions. Or if you're thinking about creating a podcast, you've got questions. We can talk about that stuff. Reach out, any topic, education, technology, I'm here for you. The email is feedback@chrisnessy.com, and you can also send a voicemail at chrisnessy.com/voicemail. I can't wait to connect. I also want to encourage you to share the show with another educator who you think would get value. Spread the word and help me reach as many educators as possible. And I thank you in advance. Lastly, I invite you to become an awesome supporter. If you are getting value from this content, what's it worth to you? I am incredibly grateful for the ongoing support from the following people who see the value in what I do here. So thank you to Leo Calbush, Brian Carpenter, Aaron Cummings, Jeff Herb, Peggy George, and Matt Miller. If you are getting value from the podcast and you'd like to become an awesome supporter, you can go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. Also want to remind you here at the end of the show, just like I did at the beginning, the 2024 House of EdTech Smackdown is coming soon. So send me those emails. I do prefer the voicemails. And that's going to be coming up the last episode of the calendar year. That's what I meant to say. This year it's going to come your way, episode 257 on December 22nd. Get those entries to me by December 20th. If you want to see what's been on the show before, it's chrisnessy.com/all-time smackdown. Next episode of the show is episode 255, and that's going to be chapter 8 of the book. And chapter 8 is titled, I had it here, there we go, Troubleshooting Common Podcasting Challenges. It's going to come your way next week, and that's going to be Sunday, November 24th. Thanks for listening, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.